All right, welcome to the first episode of season 3 of Drum Circle News, my first interview. I wanted this interview to be with my dad, Horse Aubrey. I wanted to save him before, honestly, because I kind of wanted to really just settle in and introduce myself to the Native community so everybody could see what I'm about and who I've been introduced upon this journey. And now it's time to circle back and show you where I come from and who my family is. Well, I'll let you give yourself your own introduction.
Like my son said, my name is Edward Horse Aubrey. I'm a Yurok Karuk native on the Klamath River. My village I come from is Pequin and Notchko. And I just really wanted to say, I love my people. I love growing up on the river. I love my times with my grandparents down Pequin fishing, running wild on the river, chasing pigs when I was little. You know, and then I grew up dancing and playing stick games. When I was growing up in Eureka and Arcata area, when I was probably about, I'm going to say 5 or 6 years old, I danced with a group at Bloomfield Elementary Indian Action Preschool with, I want to say the Tripp brothers, Brian and Philip, and Gary Markison. And the boys that I grew up with dancing and playing stick games and doing all the demonstration of dances were Julian Markison, Hector Tripp, Levi Tripp, and even I would say Paul Kuska. So when we were growing up, we always had the luxury of having our older generation teaching us, showing us how to play our gambling games, our warrior games of sticks, and learning how to hit center. Well, you know, some of those times were my favorite times of my life. Yeah, you know, things change over time. What would you like to talk about, son? But
there's a lot that we could really get into here. You know, we're sitting here in your shop today. You want to tell everyone what this shop means? And
this shop here is my center of balance. This is where I come to think. This is where I come to heal. This is where I discover who I am. I grew up learning how to do woodworking through my stepfather, David Reese. He was always out in the wood shop just like this, doing his artwork, painting, woodworking, carving. And that's how I was introduced to this as a young man. But I knew I couldn't make a living at it, so I became a roofing contractor. And then later on, when my stepdad passed away, made me really want to go down this journey and make a living out of this. What I do is I'm a casket maker. I've been building caskets since, I want to say around 2013. First thing I ever did was an urn for my mother. And then I started making a regalia box that was for a 100-year-old dress of my wife's and her family's that had been in her family for 100 years. So I started making a regalia box for it. And then I had a niece pass away. And when my niece passed away, my regalia box became her home, her final home. So next thing I know, I started building a lot of family members and cousins and friends casket. And then I started receiving a bunch of phone calls for these. So now I offer my service for that and gave up everything else just for that. It brings me my balance. Being a woodworker and using these hands helped me heal not only myself, but watch other people heal when they come and help build these things when their loved one is gone and they're no longer there. These are not meant for the people that have passed away. It's meant for their family for a healing journey, to heal themselves, to make themselves feel better, and to give that person a proper, respectful burial. And these are the things that we've been missing for many years. many years, we always had to be colonialized and use their way of burying our people. And it's time for us to start heading down that way where we start thinking of ourselves and our people and who we are and what we're about. And remembering that our ancestral life of living on this earth, being balanced with nature, the rivers, the oceans, the deer, the elk, that we're all the same. We're all mother of the land. We're Mother Earth. That's what we are. And I tell you what, I'm glad I went down that journey because it sure moved me to be a peacefuler person.
What is where did your design come from?
My design?
Yeah, how'd you get this? Because your plank house designs, right? So that's your casket, and
My designs come from the homes that we lived in. When we lived on. I call ourselves plank house people, and that's what we are. We're plank house people. But plank house people started from I want to say the Humboldt Bay all the way to Alaska are all plank house people. We build our houses in various different ways, but we're all similar, the same. We all are salmon people. We've come from, we live off our lands. We hunt our rivers, our bays, our oceans, and that's what brings us all together. Now, I started my design for my casket to emulate the houses that we lived in, to be our forever home. But remember, like I said earlier, it wasn't to be caskets. They were supposed to be regalia boxes that I recreated. But
so regalia boxes. So that's basically medicine boxes, right?
regalia
So
box.
where you keep your medicine.
This right here, I made this for my son when he graduated. This is what you call a feather box. He keeps an eagle feather in here that I gave him. This is considered our traditional regalia form of boxes, or ceremonial boxes, to keep our stuff that we treasure and that's precious to us. So we make these stuff for our feathers, our otter hides, everything we use for ceremonies. That's what we put them in. And that's how our traditional form is that way. I decided I wanted to make my own, and that's how I came up with the plank house design one. Because it's something that comes from my heart, that comes from me, that I give back, that I feel I have to give back. Because what really wanted me to create these things is after my mom passed and doing them for relatives and my dad, who taught me how to be an artist, when he passed, it made me want to do more for my people. It made me want to be a better person. It made me want to do the things that are going to move us forward and then give back to our people and our loved ones. And that's all it's about. Just taking care of each other and loving each other. That's who we are, and that's what we're about.
So plank houses, my mind when I think about it, I'm thinking about Pequan coming where our family comes from on the Yurok side, with and so I could just picture family plots being up on the hill, and you look down, and then there's like the Klamath River right there, and it's rushing by, and that's our life force. Well, now we live in regular homes, but before then it would be plank houses. When you were a kid, you grew up, there was no power. There was no running water. What was that like growing up on the res with that?
Oh, shoot. When I lived in Klamath, we used to have to go get our water, take it up to the house. Everything, heat our water up on the stove just so we can take baths early in the morning to go to school. Same way down Pequot was the same way. My grandpa had a little cabin when I was a little kid. They hung lanterns off it actually looked like this inside, just studded ceilings. They hung lanterns off the thing. We had an old wood stove that grandma cooked old outhouse in the back where you had use old Sears and Roebuck newspapers to wipe your up. You know, I don't know, you know what up means, but it's your ass. But that's, you know, you had to go like that with it. Anybody that had to live off grid knows what I'm talking about back in them days. Well, one of the funnest things were going down there and walking around them old plank houses downriver and the sweat house and listening to my grandpa tell stories. How he told me a story one time. I don't know how true it is. He liked to tease and joke around with me, but he said in that sweat house downriver, you just couldn't enter that sweat house because there's a rattlesnake that protected that sweat house. You actually had to sing a song, and I actually forgot that song he sung, but he sung a song so to let the rattler know that we were entering that house. And so that's how I was always taught. He made sure that he knew my family fishing hole was right there at Pequin Creek, where we used to go gill net, and family still gill nets there. And boy, that creek was awful cold. And running around there without electricity and hard times, you never thought it was hard times. It was just life, and it was fun.
Yeah. So, growing up back then, this is when the tribe was like just forming. You grew up before there was even a Yurok tribe, right?
When I grew up in the 70s and 80s, there was no Yurok tribe. In fact, my first tribal ID says Hoopa Indian Valley Reservation on it. A little red one. In fact, I got it behind the post office in Klamath. There was the old BIA office that used to be there where we'd go get our IDs and stuff like that. And yeah, we didn't form until about 96. So I grew up in a time where we were just beginning. We grew up in a time when we held our dances and held our ceremonies. It was more like a gathering at the time. People would drink and party and maybe take it to the extremes. And then as we became a tribe, we didn't want that around our people. So we started putting stipulations to our dances that we wouldn't, let people dance in that frame of mind. Or if they did something bad, that we wouldn't let them dance in that, be a part of that, bringing that medicine, that bad medicine to our people. Now, things are different. We move down a different lifespan. We do different things. But at the same time, we're all the same people. And even though the dances changed because we pushed that bad element away, we are all still one, and we still all need to look after everybody and realize there's not just certain people that call themselves culturists or gatekeepers or whatever you want to call them. They got to understand that we're all natives, no matter how much blood you are and how much blood you have. I'm 3/4. Does that make me have power over somebody that doesn't have 3/4? No, it doesn't. You're Indian no matter what you are. If you believe you're Indian and you know you're Indian, you come from that lineage, then you're Indian. And that's what we need to keep in our soul. We don't need to be telling people, oh, they're not enough Indian, they can't be a part of this, or they're not cultural enough, or they're not traditional enough. If you're Indian, you're Indian. And that's in your heart. That's in your soul. I stopped dancing probably about, I want to say 96, I'd say 96. My grandfather passed away just a little bit past that, and I just lost my heart for dancing because he was a big part of my dancing. He was a big part of my culture. He was a big part of my life. And that's what wanted me to be the better Indian. Is making my grandfather proud. His name was Lawrence Reed. Now, when he passed away, that took a big chunk out of me. Man, it was hard to get out there and dance. He wasn't there no more. But I know things are changing. I have grandkids, kids, and they need to start learning this culture. And it's probably time for me to start stepping up and being a part of it again. But I keep it alive in my heart, my woodworking, and being who I am as a human being.
being who you are as a human being, I think that's a great point to come into when you're talking about being Indian and this whole traditional cultural conversation, and people want to create these definitions about what is traditional and what is being Indian. And so to you, what is being Indian? What is being native? What is being indigenous?
That could be mean to many things to a lot of people, but to me, what it means is gathering. Not only gathering of people, but gathering of food through our mussels, our oysters, our clams, our salmon, our trout, just being part of life. Loving everyone as a human being means loving each other as one. Being a human being means knowing that you have wrongs and you have rights, and there's good and then that there's bad, that we all got to take these negativities and positivities and bring them together and try to make something beautiful. Because, regardless how your past was or what your future is going to look like, be the person you are going to be today. Treat people with love and respect. Walk the path of what's going to make you a better person. That's what being human is looking out for one another, knowing that we have faults, knowing that we could be wrong at times, and accept that we could be wrong at times, but also know when you're right, and you have to stand up for what is right.
So what made you get into politics originally? You ran and you were North District and
Well, maybe you're wrong. I don't know. Some people are probably not going to like this, but some might. I got to a point where I just didn't trust our tribal government. Our tribal governments, all tribal governments, act like corporations. And they set these people in place to make decisions over other natives. Right or wrong, their decision matters and the way they move. And when we act like a corporation, they only think the tribe comes first, but they forget our sovereignty comes from the individual native before we were formed as a tribe. So now the tribe got our sovereignty, but we had. And now they get to have the sovereignty. But only control that tribes have are over other natives, not non-natives, not, just natives. So when they want to put their thumb down, put their finger down on a person, they can't go after a non-native. They only can do it to a native. And that's where I had a problem with. They make decisions that affect people, that hurt people, and it's all about, we're supposed to be looking after each other. We need to look after each other as a whole. And so hold each other accountable and help each other and pick each other up and give them that hand up and that leg if they need it. We're there to look after each other and not to act like a corporation and see what we can take from each other. We need to realize that we're there to help people, not take people down. And that's why I always ran for our council. That's why I always fight for our rights, because we need to protect what's us. I love my tribe. I'm Yurok, and I love being Karuk. That's who I am. But bottom line is, we need to protect our people. And if you don't think your tribe's doing it by right, then it's your right to run for your people, to make that difference, to make that change. That's what life's about. That's why I ran, and that's why I'll continue to run.
how would you say that the way that northern tribes do stuff is different between southern tribes? And the reason why I say north versus south rather than west versus east is because we're in California, we're in the longest state, and we have a direct relationship with our southern brothers and sisters. Versus not really having a direct relationship with our brothers and sisters to the east or the Plains Indians in the middle. So how would you say that those tribal relationships are different?
Well, first of all, we're all native. We're all from here. Only difference is when you get to Northern California, mainly on the, I want to say, closer to the Oregon border, we start becoming plank house people, salmon people, river people. And our lifestyles are very similar. We fight over our timber, we fight for our timber, we fight for our fish, we fight for everything that we have around us so we can still survive as people. I ain't saying that the southern tribes don't do that. They just have a different setup and different culture than us. You know, we're still native, we're still California natives. You know, they're what you call song dancers, and they have beautiful songs, beautiful dances, and beautiful way of life. A lot of them were brought up in missions. We're not in missions, but they're mission Indians. And they've seen a lot of suffering, but as being different, we're not so different. We're the same. We still have the same problems. Problems don't change no matter, you know, problems are the same no matter what tribe you are. We have nepotism. We have, how can I say that? Not only have nepotism, we have to deal with the cultures around us that don't understand our identity of who we are, or what we're about, or who we speak. We have to deal with the same cultural differences with everybody else. But the problem is it's still the same thing. We're under the thumb of the federal government and that we all always have to fight for our sovereignty of our people, sovereignty of our nation, sovereignty of just being indigenous people. A lot of people don't think Indians are still around. I've heard people tell me, hey, you guys still live in teepees? I thought you guys died out in the 1800s. A lot of people don't even think we still exist, but we do.
Everybody thinks the only natives that exist are Navajos. I swear. That's what it is.
Our Cherokee.
Yeah, our Cherokee for sure. Cherokee's a whole other conversation. But so you're a contractor, right? You got your own roofing business. So what is that like, you know, like being an Indian, trying to be in the construction? This is an important conversation, especially being Yurok, Northern California Indians. We're involved in restoration projects, hundreds of millions of dollars. It's a huge part of the economy, the main part of the economy in Northern California. But only recently did the tribe start getting to play a part in that. And so when you got involved with construction, you got involved before we were playing a part. So what was that like?
Well, tell you the truth, I'm no longer a contractor. I let my contractor license go. But I was a contractor from the 2009 to about 2013. And what that was like, it was difficult. Difficult to get projects. I had actually tribes ask me to go put bids on their projects, and when I get to their projects, they already have the other contractor on their projects. They already brought people in to do their projects, and then when they asked me how come I didn't do the project or wasn't bidding on their project, I had to let them know, how can I when you already had somebody working on the project? We were always how to fight for anything we do. It was easier actually to work in the non-native communities to receive projects than it was to receive projects from your own people, because they had to go by a grant standard, a grant way of doing things. And sometimes when they went and did buildings and brought in their contractors, the contractors already brought in their own subs. So it made it harder for native people to be able to do work for their own people. They didn't even look at us. No, we've got our own people. We'll do it that way. And, you know, and that shouldn't be that way. We should be able to fight for our right to do our own buildings, to do our own infrastructure, to work on our own roads, our houses. Whatever it is we do, we should be able to have our own native contractors doing that work. And we should be able to have a say on what work is coming to us. You know, if we're out there learning these trades and they tell us, you know, why don't you go out there and go to college, learn a trade, come back home and help your people. Well, then you come home, help your people, but there's no place for you. It's harder to do work for your own people or have your own people be on your side than it is doing work for other people. And that's not right. We should be standing up for each other at all times and making sure we're pushing that Indian forward and that company forward and not looking after everything. In fact, when I was on council, that's one of the things I fought for because I helped start Preganish Construction. I helped start Yurok Construction. I helped start a lot of these corporations to put our people forward, to move our people forward, let them to be able to do them projects. And that's what we should be doing. We should be forming a tribal workforce to be able to have say on all projects that are native.
Yeah.
That's where I believe. That's what I'm about. One thing I was taught on council is that Native American tribes have the same right and same sovereignty as the states of the states in the United States. That means we have the same rights as California, same rights as New York, Washington, and Alaska. So if we have these same rights, then we should be able to move our people the same way, have our own things, and be able to have the say-so on what projects we put in, and make sure that our tribal workers have a place to work. Because I remember when I first started doing construction, we didn't have that. It was hard. You had to go out there. You had to fight for everything you got with the companies you worked for. You had to deal with a lot of prejudice. I mean, I heard every kind of Indian derogatory thing you could ever think of. But you stuck it out because the reason I stuck it out is I wanted to be better than that person I wanted to be his boss one day. And I got to be their boss.
What would you say we like get in the middle of us, like, because, right, for example, up here in Northern California, this is all Indian country. And Indian country, for those of you that don't understand, is a legal term. Meaning Indian country extends to all territories that were outlined by the treaty, whether that be our territories or common areas that are supposed to be both Indian and non-Indian. So Northern California, completely 100% is all Indian country, legal term wise, right? So in Indian country up here, we have the three largest tribes. We got Karuk, which is the second, Yurok, our tribe, which is the first largest tribe, and we got Hoopa, that's the third largest tribe. We have, and then not even to mention Pitt River, which is huge. They're involved in the Modoc Wars. That's talking about Shasta Indian, Modoc, Klamath tribes, all of us up here, right? So what is stopping us from working together, to be honest?
Well, from what I saw, not only from being on council, but also being a contractor and trying to receive these jobs, is that from what I saw, is that the federal government made us competitors against each other. We had to fight for the same grant funding, same everything. If in order to receive some funding, we're going to go against another tribe. If we want something to happen in our ancestral lands, then we're going against the other tribes that are part of the ancestral lands, like Yurok. We're Yurok tribe, we're the biggest tribe, but we also have three other Yurok tribes. We have the Puliklaw of the Yurok people, we have Big Lagoon, and Trinidad Rancheria. Those are all Yuroks in our ancestral lands. Now, they're no different than the Yurok people. They have the same rights. They're sovereign people. But we always fight with other tribes in our territories over the same issues instead of coming together. We need to start coming together and looking at each other as one. We can get along with the tribes down south. We can get along with tribes in Oregon and all come together. But when it's in your own community, we always want to fight over the same resources. And that's the problem, because that is what the federal government put in us. Conquer, what's that word now?
Divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer mentality.
Yeah. So what I noticed, working on like these different tribal projects, I've worked with, Karuk, Hoopa, Yurok. I've worked on different projects with state partners and public partners. And what I've noticed is, we're all fighting over basically like the same contracts. And then it just becomes kind of like a swinging energy. Who has right to claim to that ancestral territory, or who has the most buying power, who has the most capacity. and it becomes more about the tribe as a corporation rather than a tribe representing natives as a nation. And we're starting to get away from, like, for me as a native person, I feel like I am sovereign, not like we have a sovereign nation through a treaty. Like, I'm a sovereign person. I want to be able to just live my life on the river with my family and not be told what to do. And then so now that we've moved into this Western system of a tribal government, which comes from, what has been forced upon us, they moved away from this system that is even a government. Now it's a corporation.
That's one reason why I do run for council, is because of that, right there, what you're talking about. I grew up in this belief system I had. It doesn't make it a right belief system, but it's the belief system I always thought was right, because that's what I believed in by the elders that were teaching me. This is that we're natives. No matter what tribe you came from, we're supposed to look out for each other. We all have the same issues, the same fights, and same everything. But then when we started forming as a tribe and started looking at tribal territories and what can be brought our way, that's when the corporation mindset started coming in. And the problem with that corporation mindset is we're no longer looking at the people. We're looking at the tribe as it being the sovereign thing. And that takes away that right of the Indian people. And when you take that right from Indian people, now that's where the traumas come in. That's where we need the healing to come in, because now we don't have a say. Just like when our fish are no longer there and we cannot fish no more. Now, if we can't make a living, if we can't fish for ourselves, we can't work for ourselves as sovereign people on our reservations, and we have to abide by certain rules that the tribes set aside because they're the sovereign ones, then guess what? Then that doesn't give anything to the human being or the tribal member or whoever wants to be self-sufficient. Now, we fought for them sovereign rights. We shouldn't waive it just because we have to meet a contract standard or in order to work with the county or the parks or the feds. We should be able to have that sovereignty at all times. That's who makes us what we are.
That's a good point, because policy can be changed. We changed policy, actually. The Yuroks did. We changed California state policy working on the Prairie Creek project. We're working with Save the Redwoods League and Cow Trout. We did a Prairie Creek restoration project. And before, tribes could not hold a contract with the state or the federal government, because the federal government, when they outline a project outlined by Congress and there's money allocated, they can only give that money to a state for the state to be able to do a project. All right, but Yuroks, we changed policy. So now we can be the contract holders as well as state. There used not to be a tick box, because everything comes down to a lawyer and paperwork and being able to fill out the right documents to be able to get things done with the federal government. Well, we got our name as sovereign nations added on there so that we can now hold those contracts. We shouldn't have to waive sovereign rights. We should be able to have those.
I agree with you totally. But that's that's part of the way the tribal governments work today, and that's we need to start looking after each other. And to me, as an indigenous person, as a native person, we need to start looking at all tribes, not only that live away from us, but that's around us in our close communities. We need to start working with them better. We need to start looking at the same issues, because their issues are our issues too. And so as a native person, we need to start working better, have better working relationships.
We need to get past the family drama.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put it out there. We need to get past the family drama. Whatever happened, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever happened 5 years ago, whatever happened 2 weeks ago, we need to get past that. Okay, we need to come at it with a fresh mind. I understand. I'm not trying to judge anyone for any situation that happened, and everybody's emotions are valid. But at this point, I feel like we really need to realize, like in Indian country, it hurts us to have these small thought problems when we're being faced in a bigger world with bigger issues. Because when we have our eyes on the river and we have our eyes on the fish swimming by, because that's what we care about, we have our eyes on our daughter running across the floor because that's what we care about. There's a whole world out there eating us alive.
Our brightest minds, our best contractors, employees, and tradesmen all be a part of something and create something for every one of them. And find that connection that everybody can be a part of. Because not everybody's a fit to work for the tribe. Not everybody's fit to work for the construction corporations. But there's a fit somewhere out there. We're starting so many different new things these days. All tribes are, and it's a beautiful thing to watch and see us expand. Now we need to just start working together. If we work together, oh man, what beautiful things can come from that. That we all become one, and we all stick together, and we vote as one, and we can start making the headway, start having these relations and connectionships with other indigenous people, and we all start moving this indigenous lands forward. Oh, wow.
So a lot of what we're talking about, we're talking about the future of the Indian movement. Because what the Indian movement looked like 20 years ago is different from what the Indian movement looks like today. The Indian movement 20 years ago was about us joining together, and we go and we hold up signs, we protest, we really stand together strong, arm to arm. But in this more complex world with media and with the way that the legal system has been militarized, it's been more about being able to create these structures and create these systems. And so this is the conversation that we're really having, is like how to progress this American Indian movement forward. And I really appreciate being a part of these conversations and being able to have these conversations with you. Yeah. Where does that come from, though, the AIM movement?
The American Indian movement. Well, what I know from it is because my father, Calvin Aubrey, he was a part of the American Indian movement. He was fighting for our self-sovereignty with not only just the Yuroks, but with all tribes. He went back to Wounded Knee, and it was all about bringing us all together and having us have a say on what we do on our tribal lands, letting people have the sovereign rights to be able, not have at that time we had, from what I seen, I ain't speaking for anybody else or any other history, but what I saw with my own heart, my own mind, my own eyes, is that at that time, the federal government had a lot of say over everything we did. We couldn't do anything. As Native American people, we had no say. We were stuck under the thumb. The ones that were part of the tribes, of the inner workings of the tribe at the time didn't look out for the Native Americans that lived on the outskirts of the reservation. They only catered to the natives that lived around that organization. Because at that time, your women couldn't even go to a barber shop or go into a shopping mart without having a non-native, or white person, I should say, let them have that. Oh yeah, they're with us. They're good Indians. To me, what a good Indian meant at that time was that you got along. You did what they asked you to do, and you abided by their rules that they put in front of you. Didn't mean it's right rules. It was their rules. So he was a good Indian, or she's a good Indian. We vouch for them. And that's how it came with the corporations of working. You couldn't have a good company if you didn't have a white person vouching for you. You couldn't move forward in anything unless you had a white person vouching for you. And so when does that standard stop? That's what they were fighting for. They were fighting for us to be able to be ourselves, to be our own self-rights, to be able to fight for our own self, to have say-so on our lands. That's what that was about. That's how I saw it.
Mm. All right. So I feel like we've really given a lot in this conversation. We've honestly given way more than should have been captured on camera, to be honest with you. And thank you for giving that energy here. Before we wrap up and before we close up, is there any message that you want to give to Indian country and to Yurok people, to Northern California Indians in general, and to our family, our relatives, our greater relations?
It's beautiful to be Indian. It's beautiful to know that where you come from, to know who you are, and live the life of peace and love. And always watch out for each other. Make sure that we're always heading down the right road. If you see something, pick it up. If you see somebody on the ground, help them up. If you see somebody that needs something, lend them a hand. That's all that is. Let's be good to each other. Let's love each other.
I'll pick you up.